Welcome to Reflect with Ed Fassio. Get ready to experience one of the world's first 100% digitally generated podcasts, where we take a step back, dive deep, and strive to learn new things. Join us as we unpack thought-provoking ideas, personal reflections, and inspiring stories to help you stay in the know. Reflect is brought to you by the minds at ByteBrain and powered by emerging technologies from Google, HeyGen, OpenAI, and 11 Labs. Thanks for tuning in. Now, relax and prepare to reflect.
Welcome to Reflect, one of the world's first 100% AI-generated podcasts. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that's been shrouded in mystery and debate for centuries: the search for Noah's Ark. We've got some amazing listener-submitted material to dig through, so let's get right to it. With me today is our expert on all things biblical and historical.
Glad to be here. I think we've got a lot to unpack with this one.
Absolutely. Now, when most people think about Noah's Ark, they picture Mount Ararat, that imposing peak in eastern Turkey. But is that really where the Ark landed?
Well, if we go back to the Bible, to Genesis 8.4, it actually says the Ark rested on the mountains of Ararat, plural, not necessarily the peak itself.
So maybe not a giant ship perched precariously at the summit like in the movies.
Right. That image is pretty dramatic, but it might not be accurate. This opens up the possibility that the Ark landed somewhere more accessible, maybe on the slopes or a nearby mountain. And don't forget, we're talking about an event that supposedly happened thousands of years ago.
Yeah. And wouldn't a massive wooden structure like the Ark have decayed significantly over time? Think about the weather, not to mention the possibility of people scavenging it for lumber.
You're absolutely right. Finding a perfectly preserved Ark is highly unlikely. We'd probably only find remnants, if anything at all. Now, with that in mind, let's dive into some of the claims surrounding the Ark's location.
Perfect timing, because our listeners sent us some incredible stories. We've got everything from Kurdish folklore about a magic zone guarded by spirits to 19th century accounts of a Turkish expedition finding a gigantic structure with partitions just like the Ark's supposed design. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
But how do we know what to believe?
That's the key, isn't it? Separating fact from fiction. We need a healthy dose of skepticism, especially with stories that mix history and legend.
Like the Armenian man, George Agopian, who claimed he climbed on the Ark as a boy with his uncle. That story sounds amazing, but is there any proof?
That's the problem. No independent verification, no photos, just a captivating story. And it's not the only one. We've got tons of aerial photographs claiming to show the Ark, but many have been debunked as natural rock formations or tricks of light.
So we've got some iffy eyewitness accounts and misleading photographs. What about physical evidence? Our sources mentioned wood fragments found on Ararat. Could that be from the Ark?
That's the million-dollar question. But the truth is, radiocarbon dating hasn't been able to conclusively link any of these fragments to Noah's time.
Hold on, could you explain radiocarbon dating for our listeners who might not be familiar?
Sure thing. It's a technique used to determine the age of organic materials, like wood, by measuring the amount of a specific radioactive carbon isotope. The older the sample, the less of this isotope it has.
So if the wood isn't from Noah's time, what is it from? Could it be from other ancient structures in the area?
Absolutely. Mount Ararat and its surroundings have been inhabited for thousands of years. Those fragments could easily be from old settlements, shrines, even other ancient boats. Without more evidence, it's impossible to say for sure.
Another dead end, then. It seems like many of these Ark hunting expeditions are pretty secretive. Is it all about the thrill of the chase? Or are there other motives at play?
It's a fascinating aspect of this whole thing. Some expeditions are genuinely driven by scientific curiosity and a desire to uncover history, but others, well, there's the potential for fame, fortune, even religious validation. Think book deals, documentaries, religious tourism. The stakes are high.
I see what you mean. The allure of finding the Ark could overshadow the search for truth for some people. It makes you wonder if some expeditions are more interested in proving their own beliefs than conducting unbiased research.
Exactly, and the lack of cooperation between groups makes things even murkier. There are reports of intense rivalry, withholding information, even bribery. It casts a shadow of doubt over the whole field.
Wow, it sounds like the Ark search has become more about personal agendas than historical accuracy in some cases.
I think that's a fair assessment. The human element definitely plays a role here. Even in the pursuit of knowledge and discovery, personal biases and agendas can influence how we see things.
You know, reading through the listener-submitted material, I noticed a lot of focus on the idea of faith. It seems like some people think searching for physical proof misses a bigger point. What do you think?
You've hit on something important. The story of Noah's Ark, whether historically accurate or not, has deeply resonated with people for millennia on a spiritual and metaphorical level.
So it's not just about finding a piece of wood on a mountain. It's about what the story represents.
Exactly. The Bible itself touches on this. 2 Corinthians 5.7 reminds us that we walk by faith, not by sight. Maybe the real discovery isn't about finding the ark, but exploring our own beliefs and faith.
That's deep. So while we may not have concrete proof of the ark, the story itself makes us think about faith, belief, and what we consider evidence. But I feel like we've just scratched the surface. We'll dive deeper in part 2.
If you're looking to get in front of a global audience in a fresh, innovative way, Reflect is where it's at. With its AI-driven format, it's pushing boundaries in podcasting. Definitely something worth exploring if you're looking to collaborate and do something different. Reach out and see what you guys can do together.
It's amazing how this quest for the ark often reveals more about us, about human nature, than about actual historical facts.
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. You have this story that's been passed down for ages, and it sparks this desire in people to find proof. Like, we need to see it with our own eyes to really believe it.
That makes sense. And we see that with all kinds of mysteries and conspiracy theories, not just the ark.
Exactly. People love to solve puzzles, uncover hidden truths. And of course, there's the potential for fame and fortune if you make a big discovery.
It's not just about the evidence, though, is it? Earlier, we talked about faith and how the story of the ark taps into something much deeper than just the physical world.
Absolutely. It speaks to those deep fears and hopes we all have. The fear of total destruction, of losing everything, but also the hope for salvation, a fresh start. It's a story that's resonated with people for centuries and continues to capture our imaginations.
And I imagine this story means different things to different people, right? For some, it's a literal historical event, proof of God's power. For others, it's more of a metaphor for life's ups and downs.
That's what makes this whole topic so fascinating. There's no single right answer. It's open to interpretation. And each perspective gives us a unique glimpse into how people understand the world.
You know, this makes me think about something we've discussed before, the different ways we approach truth and evidence.
Great point. What kind of evidence do we find convincing? What makes us believe something is true? Those are big questions, and not just about Noah's Ark.
Exactly. Is it scientific data that sways us? Or historical records? Personal experiences? Maybe a bit of everything.
And who decides what counts as valid evidence? Experts, religious leaders, our own gut feelings. It's complicated, right?
Yeah, it really is. Like trying to solve a giant puzzle, but with pieces missing and some that might not even belong.
And maybe that's okay. Maybe the point isn't always to find a definitive answer. Maybe the process of searching, of questioning and exploring is just as important, if not more so.
That reminds me of what you said before. The quest for the ark often tells us more about human nature than about historical fact. Maybe that's the real discovery here.
It could be. We're always looking for meaning, trying to make sense of the world and our place in it. Stories like Noah's Ark, even if we don't have all the historical details, provide a framework for that exploration.
So what now? Do we give up on finding the ark or keep searching for that elusive proof?
I think people will keep looking. Human curiosity is powerful, and we're not likely to let go of the story anytime soon.
But here's a question. If we did find the ark tomorrow, definitively proved it was the one from the Bible, would that really change anything?
That's the question, isn't it? Would it strengthen people's faith? Would it convince skeptics? Or would it just lead to more debates and arguments? It's hard to say.
Maybe for some people, the mystery itself is more compelling than any answer. The unknown could be really fascinating, sparking all kinds of speculation.
That's an interesting thought. The ambiguity, the lack of clear proof, lets everyone project their own beliefs and interpretations onto the story. It's like a blank canvas for understanding the world.
So even if we never find the ark, the questions it raises about faith, belief, and evidence offer a lot to think about.
Absolutely. And to wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'd like to ask our listeners a question. If the ark were found, would it change your faith? Would it strengthen your beliefs or challenge them? What kind of evidence truly resonates with you?
Those are great questions to reflect on. It seems the search for Noah's Ark is ultimately a search for meaning, for understanding, and maybe even for a connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, as we wrap up this deep dive into the search for Noah's Ark, I keep coming back to this idea of the ark as a symbol.
A symbol. Yeah, I can see that. What kind of symbol do you see it as?
Well, on the one hand, It represents this incredible feat of engineering, human resilience. I mean, imagine the skill and determination it would take to build something that could survive a global flood.
Oh, absolutely. A real testament to human ingenuity, problem solving, even when facing what seemed like impossible odds.
Exactly. And then on the other hand, it's a symbol of hope. This idea that even in the midst of total destruction, there's always a chance for renewal, a new beginning.
Right. And that theme of hope, it resonates so deeply across so many cultures and religions. It speaks to that universal desire we have, that need to survive and believe in a better future.
It's fascinating, isn't it? The Ark holding these contrasting meanings. Destruction and renewal, fear and hope. It's almost like a reflection of the human experience itself.
You've hit the nail on the head there. The story of Noah's Ark, it really does capture those fundamental tensions we wrestle with as humans. Our capacity for both good and evil, our vulnerability to nature's power, and yet that persistent hope for a brighter future.
And it makes us think about our own values, doesn't it? What do we cling to when times get tough? What gives us hope when everything seems lost?
And those questions, they're just as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. We might not be facing a literal flood, but we've got our own challenges. Climate change, social unrest, political divisions.
Yeah, it's like the story gives us a way to look at our own times, reminds us that even in the darkest moments, the human spirit can find a way forward.
And maybe that's the biggest takeaway from our deep dive today. Whether or not we ever find that physical ark, the story itself gives us this timeless message. Hope, resilience, the strength of the human spirit.
I love that. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? The evidence, the claims, the motivations behind those searches, and ultimately the deeper meaning within this ancient story.
And even though the mystery of Noah's Ark might never be completely solved, the questions it brings up, the conversations it sparks, well, those will continue to fascinate and inspire us for generations to come.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the search for Noah's Ark. We hope you enjoyed the journey and maybe even found something to ponder along the way. Remember, the search for understanding never really ends. And sometimes the most profound discoveries are the ones we make within ourselves.
In the cyber ocean of online voices and recycled content, something different has arrived. Reflect isn't just another podcast, it's the future of storytelling, powered entirely by AI. From curating data to assembling thought-provoking ideas, we've redefined how journeys are told. Reflect is a podcast that thinks, learns, and evolves with each episode. Every tale, every insight, crafted by the most advanced AI technologies. A podcast that disrupts the industry, breaking free from traditional formats, taking you on an entirely new experience. So tune in now and reflect. We're telling the future.